All right, I'm going to get started with the music section of this, and same thing goes. If you guys have questions, you're more than welcome to ask. We'll just reiterate the question for the filming purposes. So this part of the score sheet, the music section, remember that Cowboy mentioned this, you're only being judged on what you perform while the music is playing. So anything that's done in your cheer, there's a good chance that the judges might not even be 100% watching the cheer at that point. So only the skills that happen in music are what's scored. A few things about it. With the score sheet, there's a major emphasis on execution and difficulty. And pretty much in every single category, execution plays the same role as difficulty. They offset each other. So what that means is that for any ability level, as long as you're doing what's in your ability level and you do it well, you should be able to and have a great chance of scoring very close to other teams who may have a harder skill level if you can really focus on the execution side of it. For the building part of this score sheet, it is worth 40 of the 70 points. So there's 10 points for difficulty of pyramids and stunts and 10 points execution. We have 10 points for tumbling, and that's running and standing tumbling combined. Again, 5 points difficulty and 5 points execution. And then same thing for jumps, 5 difficulty, 5 execution. And then all the judges have a 5-point category for the overall effect, which is then averaged and 5 points given to the score at the end. So going right into the execution part, Cowboy kind of mentioned this when he was talking about the stunts for the cheer. We're looking for all the exact same things. We're looking for the tops and the bases, body lines from start to finish. Are their legs close together, or is one super wide trying to adjust the height? We're looking at flexibility and the lines of the top girls. We're looking and watching synchronization, how they dip, how they set out on cradles. So with the 10-point execution, there's lots of things we're looking at that to warrant that 10 points. Between transitions, are the bases resisting a lot? Are they keeping feet in close together? So again, and we've trained our judges to script and do a lot of scripting notes and make sure we detail as much as possible when they're writing out the stunts your team's doing, just to make sure we do have the correct score for the execution. And just a little quick side note, when the judges are judging, we've taught them about comparative scoring. So basically when we're giving scores out, they're scoring your team based on what the teams before them have done. So again, that's why we've trained them on really using their scripting sheets to be as detailed as possible to make sure that we put you in the right ranges, and as well as the execution and stunt ranges. Moving on to like the difficulty part. Is everybody good on the execution side of that? One other thing, we don't assign, yeah. She asked, we do comparative scoring. So basically, when the very first team goes of the day, that team kind of sets the bar for all of the scores that happen. So as the next team goes, we do have ranges for skills that are performed, but for execution, I'm judging their execution for what they did, but I'm also looking at the score I've given your team. So for instance, there's no exact, yes, constantly. So every single team has their own tracking sheet. So once the second team goes, I'm looking at my notes and I'm looking, well, this team had 2 falls, this team had 1, they had 2 bobbles, and I'm adjusting my score based on that. Does that make sense? Sorry, I kind of made that a little confusing.
So I have a question. If you're the first team that goes, and let's say you have a phenomenal routine, but maybe they're scoring exact, right? Will they ever go back and look at another score if they notice the rest of the division maybe is scoring much higher and they thought this team probably should have been higher? Yes,
we do. We are allowing that this year, but only until the end of the division. So once the scores are set out, and if my last team to go, I felt like my first team, I had them way too high, then I can go back and fix that. But it has to be before the division, any results are sent out anywhere. So once the event is done, no scores can go back and be changed. But again, we've really trained the judges on the scripting and the scribing to make sure that that doesn't become a problem at all, so fingers crossed. Any other questions about the execution? The last thing I was going to say is we don't tell the judges an actual score for a stunt fall. So the judges kind of have their own. They get to come up with what they want to take off for a fall, and we training them also that there are different types of falls. There are falls that may happen into a cradle, compared to a fall where somebody and all 4 bases are splatted on the ground. So there's a difference, and a judge would take off more for that type of fall compared to a fall that came back into the bases or into an early cradle. But one thing about falls hit you in numerous places on the score sheet, not just on this execution side. So a fall is going to affect your difficulty score, it's going to affect your execution score, and it's going to affect your overall score. Also, the safety judge has a deduction for falls. So again, like we mentioned in the very first slide, what we're really trying to emphasize is clean, safe routines with the emphasis on execution. So going into stunt difficulty, this is a 10-point category, and everything is based off of the pyramid progression. Do you guys all have that, or have you seen that? That lists all the stunts. That is one of the best tools that you can use. It just gives a whole list of skills. Now, you do not have to do skills that are listed in there. There are other skills that can put you in those ranges, and we've trained the judges on finding common areas that stunt may fall into. A big part when we're going through this difficulty is a few things. Looking at the number of bases. So are they stunting with 2 bases and a back? So 3 bases versus 4 bases where they're using an extra person as a front spot. How are the bases moving? Do the bases move in a full up, for example? Is there a release that happens, or is it a modified version where the bases are turning more than the top is spinning? So we train the judges on really focusing and really making sure we script and separate the different skills that different teams are doing, and making sure that we get them all correct and in the correct progressions as we make your ranges. Another thing is maximizing the number of athletes you have. So each judge will know how many kids are on your team before they run out onto the floor. And from there, we do have some majorities that you have to meet to get into these ranges, which we'll go over in a second. But in the general scheme of cheerleading, if you have a team of 12, how many stunts can you put up? 3 or 4. You can do 3 multi-based, or you can put up 4 single-base. And so, again, the judges are always looking at and comparing team to team. And you'll notice when we get into a team of 15 or less only has to have 2 stunts to get in majority. But a team of 15 can technically put up 3 multi-base group stunts, or they could put up 5 single-base stunts. So it does become a numbers game and counting numbers when we're trying to put your team against another team within a certain range. So all those things will come into effect. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? I kind of mentioned this, the technique and the type of grips we use for spinning skills. If you'll notice on the progression sheet, we have listed on the bottom towards the intermediate, I believe, what we call modified full-ups, which are your versions of, if you've heard the name Ruby Slipper, or cross-leg full-ups, or skills that are different than an actual full-up, which has a release and bases not moving. We also look at where the stunt starts and where it finishes, because we live in this world of double-ups now, which get very tricky because a lot of times they start here, but by the time they dip, they've dipped here, or where they finished extended facing this way, and the bases turn to get them to the front, which no longer is a double-up. Correct? Because it technically caught to the side and the bases are turning. So that's kind of one of those, do I give them the credit in the difficulty side for the double up, or do I take off on execution, or do I give them credit for a 1.5 on the pyramid with execution? So it's kind of one of those battles, but we do train them to look where the stunt starts and finishes for both. Also,
you guys, when you're looking at these skills with the 1.5s and the double ups in particular, just think about how fluid it looks. Because the bases have to move some, but how fluid does it look? Because like Josh just said, are you fully extended and then it slows down and then you finally get the last half around, or does it get to the extended position as the last half turns around? That's a more fluid visual. So how fluid it looks is going to really influence whether it counts as a 1.5 or a double up, and then the execution comes into play from that. So that's how you want to look at these spinning skills that require the bases to spin some as well.
Also on the progression sheet, you'll notice some of the terms will say extended body position. So a liberty is not considered a body position. So anywhere on those sheets where in the difficulty range where it asks for an extended body position, like for example, a full up immediate extended body position would be a full up hill stretch or a full up straight to arabesque. So anytime the skill hits directly to a liberty, it can possibly lower in a difficulty grid compared to that of a hill stretch. Also, you see this quite often where you full up into a lib, but then they kick out to an arabesque. That is still a full up to a liberty, not a full up to an arabesque. Does that make sense to everybody? Because that's been confusing. Also, you'll see the term target in there or platform. That just is referring to feet together. Anytime feet land together, we call that a target. So as you look through that progression pyramid, if you have any questions about any of the terms or what any of the stunts are, on the website, they are listed out exactly how they're listed on that progression sheet. So feel free to go through that and watch videos of them, and it shows all the difference in the stunts and pulling through on body positions, et cetera, that move you higher into the difficulty pyramid. Just a few other things about difficulty. We are looking at all your transitions in and out, and some of the transitions do fall onto that progression pyramid. So transitions can count as some of your hardest stunts depending on what they are. So again, always when they're scoring your routine, we're always looking at how you get into the stunt, what do you do in between the stunt, and how do you get out of it to help increase score. And a big one is we're only scoring what you complete in a performance. So say you have 5 stunt groups and 2 of them fall. You were only scored on 3 stunts. So my judges are writing down 3 full up immediate libs. And then the next one you had 5 stunts, they did 5 switch ups. So how many stunts is that total now for that team? 8 stunts total. So we've also trained our judges to write that on the bottom of the sheet. And we're keeping track of falls. So we're doing all of that, again, to make sure we're getting you guys in the right progression and into the right range on the score sheet. So that's going to be this next sheet here. If you'll notice the team sizes on the side. For teams 15 and under, to get into a range, to the highest range, 2 stunts must be performed with 15 or less. And it just kind of moves all the way down from there. In basket tosses, we count 4 bases as being normal. So if you're using your basket toss as one of your hardest skills, you can only use 1. You can perform as many basket tosses as you want, but only 1 basket toss skill if the majority are performing them together, only 1 can count in towards one of your hardest stunts. Does that make sense to everybody? And well, when I get to the next slide, it'll make more sense on like what the stunt part is. And then this is the majority for if we're using a single base on the side. So any team of 15 is required to have 2 stunts that go. Now, if a team has 3 stunts, both teams will be in the same range, but the team who did the 3 stunts compared to the 2 will be scoring higher in the ranges. And on this next slide, the next slide is kind of the explanation of all the ranges and basically how we score this. So when you're performing your routine, we're taking the 3 hardest skills that you've done, and that's how we're setting your range score. So if you look on the side here, the key in the dark purple, that refers to super elite stunts. So a team who does 3 super elite stunts is going to be in the range at a 9.6 to a 10. Now, this is a suggested range. So that does not mean the judges have to put you in there, because there's numerous examples we can talk about that. Say I have a team of 15 athletes, and they do 3 stunt groups, and of the 3 stunt groups, they do 3 double ups, and 1 of them falls. Okay, so they do three super elite skills, but that one stunt group falls in every single skill. Have they met their majority? They've met their majority because you only have to have 2 stunts. So if that group fell 3 times, they still hit the majority. Like, I'm not trapped at putting them at a 9.6 where they've dropped 3 times. So remember that these are suggested. So we're going to work as much as possible. If a team's hitting all 3 of these, then they should be in that range. But where it's suggested, if a team is dropping one consistently, we can lower them out of that range. Everybody good on that? For these ranges, so my team of 15, we have 3 stunt groups, and we attempt 3 double-ups, and 2 of them fall. So only 1 double-up hits. What that means, since they've not met the majority, right, because majority is 2, we drop that an entire level. So that double-up now goes as an elite level stunt. So I've got my team of 15 with 3 stunts. Only 1 of them falls. Do they make the majority? Yes. So with the 3, since 2 of them executed it, it stays in the super elite level. Do you guys all follow me there? Yep. Now with my 15, so we have just our regular multi-base groups, and 2 of those stunt groups decide to use front spots. So 3 of the 2 use front spots. For that double up, because of the front spot, the additional base, I now drop them another level as well. So anytime 50% or more of the stunt groups are using an additional base, whether it be in the cradle, whether it be if they're helping on an invert toss, anytime they're assisting weight at any point, they are considered an additional base, we drop the level. Does everybody follow that? So our team of 15 that has 3 stunts, 2 of the 3 stunts that they use have front spots. 2 of the double-ups do. So those now count as an elite level skill. Now let's say that of those 3, 2 of them fall. But the one that completed still has a front spot. So now that team is dropping 2 levels. It went from a super, it dropped down because we didn't make majority, and then I drop another one because they're using extra bases. Does that make sense to everybody? That one can be a little tricky, but so you're dropping a level no matter what when 50% of the bases use an additional, or 50% of the stunt groups use an additional base, and then dropping if they're not meeting the majority of the amount of stunts that are required. That's probably the trickiest part of this. Does everybody understand that?
So essentially you're better to keep just the 2, in that scenario, just keep your 2 that are flawless so that you're not, A, getting the points on the deductions, plus risking knocking yourself down a level with the extra base.
Sure. You're just at the risk now if my next team that comes out does the exact same thing as you and has 3 stunts, they will be scoring higher within the range. So, yep, that's a go either way.
4 stunt groups and 2 out of 4 have a front.
That's 50%. That drops a level. Yep. So our question was if 4 stunt groups, yeah, 50%. 4 stunt groups and 2 of them use spotters, that's at the 50%. So it drops 1 level on the difficulty grid.
So you could realistically have the 1 additional spotter in the 4 groups and still maintain your level.
Say that one more time.
You have the 4 stunt groups, but only 1 has the additional spotter.
Yes.
You still stay in there?
You still stay in the, yeah, that's correct. So 4 stunt groups and only 1 of the stunt groups has the extra base. They're still in super elite for all categories for that. Good question. A few other things too on this. If you'll notice on the side, we have the little gray boxes that have 2 numbers in them. What that's referring to is on our second box. So on the second one down, this team performed a super elite, and their 3rd hardest skill was either an elite or an advanced level skill. So within that range of the 9.1 to 9.5, you can then obviously give more points, more tenths for the team that did the elite level skill compared to the advanced side. So again, we're training our judges doing really good scripting notes because that happens, and that can happen throughout this whole part. But again, so we talked about it's comparative scoring, so we're comparing your team to all the other teams that are going. Let's see here. Also, you don't have to do all the stunts in one box. So you can, we're taking whatever stunts you do, we're picking the 3 hardest ones, whatever those are. But it might be an advanced, super elite, and a elite, which is completely fine. There's no there's no set stone that you have to stay in one box and do all the skills in that. That's why we have this large range to say that you can jump in and out of the different boxes. And again, even though there's only three stunt skills get you into a range, everything else you do in there is what helps increase your score within your range. And again, these are suggested. So if all the teams, the first 5 teams who are going are all hitting right around the same area, and my next team goes, and I need to have a bigger gap, I don't necessarily have to put them in that 9.6 because I felt like the stunts they did a few less than all my teams that are in that 9.6 because they did 5 super elite skills. So I'm rewarding them. I can pull back slightly. These are just suggested. So this is to help get our judges to get you in the same range, but these aren't set in stone. So they're able to go in and out of the ranges as needed. Does that make sense to everybody? Because kind of how we mentioned about the falls. Because you can still hit majority and still get into ranges with falling numerous times. But as a judge, I can pull you out of that range because you're falling. Everybody good? Let's see, next one. Oh, let's go and we'll show you guys some videos and just some examples. And again, I'm going to kind of, once we watch it, I'm going to go through with you guys and talk to you about how we train the judges on how I just scripted this and how I'm judging your teams. So basically as a judge, and here's how we've trained them, here's how I've just scripted this whole routine. The team had 11 athletes, so automatically I already know my majority has to be 2. So, and I'm writing down here, they did 2 kick flips to stomach. They did 2 basket inverts to prep. One of them had an additional base. They did 2 press extensions. They did 2 1.5 spins to prone, all with extra bases catching. And they did 2 front walkovers to extension, all of them with extra bases. So, where those stunts start out, I'm taking the 3 hardest skills that team did on there. So, my first skill, that's the hardest, is an elite level skill, which is this invert to basket. However, if you notice my girl over here on the right who is assisting, and we said at 50%, I've got to drop it a level. So this stunt technically starts out as elite, but now where do I move it to? Advanced, strictly because my extra is helping on this side. This one has a spotter, but she's not helping. But regardless, it still drops because it's the 50%. The next skill that we have on there was going to be the front walkover to extension. And if you noticed, when they did the basket for the front walkover to extension, it's the last one on there, they used 4 bases. So the front walkover to extension is an elite level skill, but because there's 4 bases on them, even if it was just 1, since it's only 2, regardless, if there was 3 and only 1 used it, it would be different. But since there's only 2 stunt groups, they both use it. We drop it to advanced. And then the last skill on here is the forward suspended roll, like the Baja twist is what we call it, or the Baja, but the same thing there. It is an advanced level skill. If you look on your sheet, it's the forward suspended roll with a twist. That is an advanced level skill, but since I have extra bases catching it, because every one of them had 4 catchers, that becomes an intermediate skill. So of those 3 skills this team did, we have an advanced, and an intermediate. So our suggested range for that is going to be, do you guys have this sheet as well? It's a little hard to see up there, but my advanced skills are the green. So I've got a green, and then I've got the little gray box because they did an advanced or an intermediate skill as well. So that puts them starting their range, their scoring range at a 5.1 to a 5.5 is where I start that team at. Suggested. So for myself, I want to say I think I gave them, I scored this team a 5.3. And the reason I scored them a 5.3 was I liked the kick flip in the opening. I thought that was a nice opening, a neat little transition you don't see a whole lot. So I chose to reward them. They ended up doing about 5 total stunt skills. So I chose to go a little higher in the range to reward them for some creativity for that part. Now, on the execution side, I felt like the execution was okay. I thought there was a lot of wide legs in all the extensions. They were a little wide, and then one of the stunts on the right presses a few times. One of them has one leg down. So I went at a 8.3 for the execution side. There were no falls, but I just felt there was very little flexibility. They showed no body positions. Again, the legs wide, so I went about an 8.3. Does everybody see where and how I got to those scores? Yes? Everybody's comfortable with that? Okay, we'll show you another one. So, for this one, I have scripted that they did 4 single base full up immediate libs, and 1 was a full group, which is a super elite skill. Then they did a Liberty low full around to pull through stretch. And then they kicked out to arabesque, super elite. And then they did the double up, which was actually, they did 2 1/4, so they did double up, which is also super elite. So now we're sitting at 3 supers. So super, super, super. That puts them at the top range, which is a 9.6 to 10. So for this group, they're my first team to go. I gave them a 9.9. And I could argue giving them a 10 because I felt like the opening was a wow moment for me. I even wrote wow on my sheet. I like the little kick transition down to the split that flipped the forward roll. I thought that was creative. Yeah, I just said wow when I watched that one. So to me, I went 9.9 just because they were my first team to go, but I could have easily given them a 10 and been able to give, if a team could do that or harder than that, I feel like they would have deserved a 10 as well. So I could argue that either way.
This is a good example too. Y'all were asking earlier about, okay, so if two's what I need, is it better for me to only do 2 or do the third one? And you know, of course, that's going to depend on your execution. But this is a good example of, so the way they've set it up, they've got the majority with the single base. But as a coach, I probably would have been sitting there. I go, okay, I've got 1 person left. How can I utilize them? Well, my single bases look awesome, but this one makes me a little nervous. You know what? I'm going to make it the double base. Doesn't hurt me, allows me to keep that person up in the air, reduces the risk of that one, which I think may be the one that falls, makes it safer, makes it stay up, and I've utilized everybody, and I haven't hurt myself by adding that base because I still got the 4 over here anyway. But it allowed me to get the 5th one up and be comfortable about it. As a coach, that's how I would be thinking all the time with my stunts. When and where do I mix and match? When can I go with single bases to get 1 more person up? Or when do I add the extra base to make that one stay up? Okay, so that's how you kind of want to look at this when you're looking at that. 2 major, do I put the other one up? Sure, if it's going to help you more than likely, then go ahead and use it because it can help you. And if maybe you have to put the base on the front, it still could help you some, okay?
And even here, like they're going 2 over their majority because with 16, the majority stunts is 3. So they're showing 5, so obviously I need to move them up in their little bit of a range. All right. The next one we're going to go over is going to be our pyramids. So pyramids are going to be scored just the exact same way we just talked to you guys about the partner stunt section. The only difference for this is there is no longer a majority with your numbers. So for pyramids, just one stunt group meets your majority for it. So whatever, say you've got a team of 16 and you do just a 3-structure pyramid and the middle girl does 3, she's the only one who does anything, the others just stay as bracers. Her doing 3 skills gets you into your range. So from there, if that same team, the next team has 12 kids and they use 2 people on the outsides, they still only need 1 person to get them in range. However, if there's 2, then I'm going to be bumping them up higher into the range compared to the 1. So if you're just using 1 person to do all your difficult skills and get your 3 difficulty scores, most likely you're going to be sitting at the very lowest part of the range, maybe not even in range, because ranges are what? Suggested. Recommended. So they're not married to putting you into that range necessarily. Does that make sense to everybody? So for a team who has, like we just said, 4 stunt groups, and they only have 1 person doing the difficult skills, we're judging the 3 hardest to get them into their range. And then everything else they do can help increase the score. Or again, for me, I'm leaving the room for a team to do 2 people spinning and doing all the hard skills so I can put them up higher into that range. A few other things about pyramid stuff. As you look through the different pyramid, there's a different progression sheet for pyramids. When using bracers, changes levels within those skills. So if I'm doing a high-to-high spin and I haven't braced and I let go and re-brace, that scores lower in the pyramid than somebody who does not use the bracers. So as you look through that pyramid, look where skills fall in there, and a lot of times you will score higher by not using bracers. Obviously, anytime you flip, you have to, or some of the released inversions off the ground that go extended, to make them legal, you have to have a bracer for them. So again, when we're looking at difficulty in pyramids, a big one is going to be looking at the bracers. How are the bracers utilized? Are the stunts only hitting because they have bracers with them? Do they start with bracers on the bottom? We're also looking at the different transitions that all the stunts are doing. And again, we're just always taking notes and keeping track of how many people are involved in doing elite level skills in your pyramid. And that's going to help you, what helps really drive your score up. Let's see. Execution, again, same exact thing as we were looking in partner stunts. We're looking for clean lines. We're looking for dismounts being tight from start to finish, everything being controlled. We're looking at flexibility when used. And again, we're looking at variety of skills. So we're looking for teams who, well, that was another thing for all of the, for anywhere in the range and the progressions, you can't keep repeating skills and have it count. So I can't do a double up to target and then do it again and have that count as my skills. So the 3 hardest skills have to be different. Now I could do a double up that pulled through to a liberty, because that is now different than a double up to target. But skills must be different in order to be counted. And just to say this again, I can't remember if I did or not, basket tosses can only count for one of your most difficult skills. Any questions at all about the pyramid? We talked about, remember that the majority is out the window on this one, but the same still falls for the 50% using an extra base. So that bump down or dropping a level is still in effect for pyramids. So anytime you're 50% or more using front spots, drops the whole category. Are we good on pyramids? For the jumps, it is split in execution and difficulty. And knowing that the difficulty has no influence whatsoever on the execution side of the score sheet. So also, it's split into 3 different categories. We have elite, which is a triple jump. You have your advanced, which is a double jump. And then our intermediate is a single jump. So we're only scoring you on the 3 jumps, or however many jumps you do. But 3 is the max that we're going to score you on. So you can choose to do 9 jumps. But we're only scoring you on the 3 that are connected that we feel the most difficult. And again, in training, we've trained the judges to think this. So Team A does full squad triple toe touches. And Team B has most of their team do triple toe touches. Who scores higher in difficulty? The team who had the full squad. Now, we also don't assign anything for most or majority. We use common sense. I can watch a cheerleading team that has 12 people and 4 girls in the back don't jump. I know that that's most of the team. So we're not given a number. So again, I'm just scripting down on my piece of paper that. So as a recommendation to coaches, I would have every single kid in your team jump. And I would do 3 jumps, and I would have them be 3 different jumps. And I would have them be advanced level jumps. Because the team that goes out there and does full squad and does a right hurdler, a toe touch, and a pike is going to score higher than a team who goes out there and does full squad, double toe touch, and a pike. Why? Because they showed me a variety of 3. So, and again, we've trained the judges on every single team, and again, it's so important in scripting, but every single team that performs that same jump sequence with the same amount of athletes has to get the same difficulty score. So, again, keeping them together, we only do 3 jumps max. You can do as many as you want, but you're only scored on 3. And the more you do, the more likely your execution score is going to go down. Because the execution score, again, 5 points, and we're looking at your approach. We're looking at, do your feet start together and finish together? Are we in sync? Do we all have the same motion? Are the chests coming down? How high are the legs? Are there girls in the front, really high jumpers, and the girls in the back barely jumping? So we're looking at all of that when we're giving out the execution score. Are there questions about the jumps? Jump to tumbling is not scored in the jumps. It does not increase difficulty in any way. The jump to tumbling only can help on the tumbling part of the score sheet. So anytime there's a jump tumble connection, it is not scored in any way, shape, or form except for the execution of it in the jump section. Are we good on jumps?
You guys, the logic on this when they were looking at the score sheet was, I think last year you required quite a few jumps, right, to get. Well, yeah, and actually, me and Josh see this across the country. You know, every piece of the cheerleading routine is important, but some are more important than others. And you don't want jumps to overly drive things. But the other thing is, when you start having to be required to combine 4, 5 jumps at a time, your execution gets so bad that it's not even entertaining. And if you really look at it, if you start looking at it, you'll notice that by the 3rd or 4th jump, half the team sometimes can barely get off the ground, and they're throwing a halfway straddle and it's supposed to be a pike. So by reducing that number that was required on you guys, we're hoping the jump technique will improve, and in particular, they'll be able to get their feet back underneath them every time instead of landing wide. Now you're putting pressure on the knees and your ankles in particular. So we're hoping they get to be able to snap back down. Execution becomes better, which I think personally makes the entertainment value become better because the jumps look better out there. So that was the logic behind it.
Are we good on jumps? Yes. All right, the next one's going to be our tumbling section, and this is where we get probably the most questions. For the difficulty side of this, what's going to drive your score is going to be what the most amount of athletes all do synchronized together is the driver for your score. So we get the question a lot. If I have one full on my team, should I throw that? Because that's only one person doing it and she's not involved now in the group tumbling. So do I just get rid of the full? No, you throw the full and you can have it mix while the round off tucks go, the full goes after, or in between them, or again, throw the full because that's going to help add points to your difficulty. But the driver is going to be what you do in groups, the largest number possible. But at the same time, you can also think you can still mix skills as well. So I have a team of 15 athletes, and 5 of them have fulls, and 5 of them have round off tucks. So again, I could possibly, at one point in the routine, I'd probably have all 10 of those girls do a round off tuck, and then somewhere else have those the 5 fulls go. Because then I just showed 10 kids doing some skill, or I could even have my 5 girls do the round off tuck and my 5 do the fulls if I don't have a lot of time. But the group is the key term there. I did just show 10 people group tumbling, right? One set did the tucks, one did the fulls. But again, now if I was to split it, and I did the 10 did the tuck, and then the 5 did the full, which is going to score higher? The second one, because now I've just showed 15 different tumbling skills compared to 10. Does everybody follow that? Do you have to do standing and running? No. But if a team does do both, they should expect to score higher than the team who does not do both. We do not count repeat skills. So if you have one girl who throws 9 fulls in the routine, she still threw 1 full and is being scored as 1 full.
And by the end, it's an exhausted full.
However, she could come and do a full through to full, and then that would count separately. And then she could go do an Arabian through to kick full, and that would count separately as well. Right. However, it's only one person tumbling still. So that's not going to drive my score up by points. That's going to be little tenths that help drive that score up. And then again, remembering that it's going to be cumulative. So the team who does a variety of standing, a variety of running, and all in big groups is going to be the one that's going to be scoring the highest. Are we good on tumbling, the difficulty part? Yes, that was our best one yet.
And again, the logic on this, how many of y'all are school teachers? Okay, you all know how important participation in the school is in general. And with kids nowadays, it's hard to get them to participate in anything probably, if they're anything like my kids. So making it even harder to make the cheer team, things like 50% plus 1 in tumbling were causing a reduction in participation, and it's happening in other states too. Because I can take 20, but if I got 8 tucks, how many do I take? I take 16. Now that was the logic for some coaches, and you just cut 4 kids that could have made another stunt group or whatever, and could have participated. So part of the logic was that. The other part was, and I didn't ask you all this earlier, but that first team that did the cheer, and remember they had the tucks in the middle of it? I've asked some other groups, and I've gotten answers from 6 to 16. Well, if you have a very strict 50% plus 1, or this many gets you this, whatever, and you've got officials or coaches, and you're seeing 12, and it was actually 12 tucks go, and I have answers from 6 to 16. Well, some people are going to be out of range, and the coach is legitimately going to be able to say, you have to put me back here. So we've taken the pressure off of that. And what we're hoping is that people will now pay more attention to execution. Obviously, we taught the officials how to logically go 20 are on. I can see a formation setup where it looks like half of them are going to do something, half of them are not. So they're kind of thinking, okay, this looks like 10 of something's getting ready to go. So so they can have little cues on how to count. But for you guys, it's going to reduce you having to try to force tumbling. It's going to allow you to take as many kids as you want. That makes sense. And really, when you think about it, if a team throws 15 standing back handsprings and a team throws 13 standing back handsprings, but the cutoff happened to be that where I'd have to move you into one range or another, is there really that big of a difference between 15 and 13 visually? No. As a matter of fact, a lot of times in real time, I bet half the coaches and officials may think it's 13, 14, or 15, but that's okay. What they want to be seeing is the execution. Is it the majority, not even majority, is it most of the team, or is it about half the team? So it takes a lot of pressure off from the tumbling standpoint.
And a big part of that also is in anything with the choreography, if you're trying to mask skills, then you have to expect the judges to not see possibly the good part of the skill. Because there was a video earlier, and they had 5 girls running to the front, and 3 of them did a full, 1 did a tuck, and 1 did a layout. So I'm watching my half of the floor, and I really only caught the tuck because her legs were bent and it was higher than the fulls were. So by doing that, as a coach, you're risking us missing all your fulls and not getting credit for them because of how you're putting them in your routine. So if you're trying to hide skills, expect other skills to be hidden as well that may not go in your favor. So just keep that always in mind, because the judges get to watch it once. They don't get to keep going back and checking how many people fold on your team. So my recommendation would be, the team had 3 fulls, so throw your 3 fulls and have the other 2 girls going somewhere different with maybe your group skill. Because for me, it took away, and I missed 2 of the fulls that were thrown, so they didn't get credit for me for them. So just keep that in mind. The next part is going to be, oh, yeah.
Tumbling question. We are from an area where if you have 2 kids that actually do tumble on your team, it's a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
With comparative judging, if we're executing those beautiful cartwheel forward rolls,
Yeah,
and you're gonna
I'm coming to that next. That's my next point, so I'll get to your question, I think. Because I'm going to go over execution right now. I'm going to explain exactly what you're talking about. Because execution on this the difficulty has 0 influence on execution. So I could have a team, just like you said, go out there and do cartwheels and forward rolls. And if they are done perfectly, they can get a 5. And they should be scoring very high if they are executed perfectly. Now, on the difficulty side, they're likely to not get much higher than, 0.5 on that score. But see, you're at a 5.5, which is still close in comparison to somebody else. Because, again, most people aren't going to be scoring 5s, because I doubt too many teams out here have squad fulls, right? So as long as you can hit for every part of this score sheet, if you hit that execution side and you maximize what your team can do, you will be competitive against other teams. It's just like Cowboys' explanation, maybe it was to the other group. If a team has harder skills and can do them cleanly, they deserve to get the points and credit for it. That's just how it is. That's how sports go. So, but with the execution being 5, where difficulty has nothing to do with it, it lets everybody still be at somewhat of an equal playing field, because the difficulty has nothing to do with the execution of it. So unfortunately, yes, though on the difficulty side, it is going to be low, because your 2 tumblers aren't going to, even if you have 2 girls who tumble out of 12 and those 2 girls throw fulls, that doesn't put them at a 3.0. That still keeps them down low in scoring, because you had 10 kids not even tumble or not do any flipping aerial type skills. So just 2 tumblers, period, is not going to help drive a score a lot. Dance is worth 10 points. So, well, here's a question. Does anybody here compete at UCA's Nationals? Anybody? Nobody. UCA's Nationals, dance is worth 2 points. So teams can get away with doing an 8 count of dance and score fine, because 2 points out of 100 on that score sheet is not worth a whole lot and is not affecting the team's placement, so to say. On the score sheet here, it is 10 points. So you may not be able to get away with doing an 8 count of dance to get a full 10 points. There's not a minimum or a maximum requirement for your dance. But in a 10-point category, I would recommend doing more than 1 to 2 8 counts of dance, because, again, comparative scoring, 2 teams have equal dances. 1 is 2 8 counts, 1 is 5. In a 10-point category, I'm going to lean my points closer to the 5-point or the 5 8 count dance versus the 2, if they're the exact same dance. Now, with this 10-point category, there are a lot of different drivers, and we've kind of trained the judges to try to start all dances around a 7 range, because the dance is one area on the score sheet that is very, very subjective. And me and you may have completely different styles of dances we like. So, again, this is a suggested score we've told them, to think of all teams starting about a 7. And if they're using, on that sheet, you guys, there's some indicators of what we're looking for in the dance. So we're looking at sharp motions. We're looking for level changes, looking at formation changes, variety of motions, motion placement. All of those things are going to help drive my 7 suggested score higher if they're executed well. And it could go lower if executed poorly. But we've really trained the judges in, if you're giving a team a 4 out of 10 on a dance, that is, in school terms, that is a very failing grade. So we've told them to keep that in mind because it is a subjective score. And so we want to start around the 7s. And then for those dances that have really good flow, they work well with the music, they enhance the routine, then I'm going to start going up into my high 9s for those dances. If the dance just meets my requirements, they did floor work, they did formation changes, they had levels, they had variety, I don't like the dance whatsoever at all because it wasn't super sharp, then I'm going to keep them in my 7. I'm going to keep them at the C. But again, I do have the range and the capability of going lower. So if they do 2 8 counts of dance, it's not done well, there's no formation changes, then I might choose to drop to the 6 or lower if I see fit. I would have a hard time in a 10-point category giving any team lower than 5s or 4s in dance. I think that's, unless they're not doing a dance, which would then be a 0, or like we just talked about, if they're doing just a few 8 counts, or you never really know, is it a motion sequence they did compared to a dance? But again, try to hit all the things that aren't subjective, is my recommendation for you in a choreography sense. Get floor work, get formation changes, get variety in there, make sure the dance fits to the music, and then work to get your base score, and then work on the sharpness to help increase your score higher into the range.
Yeah,
Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on dance?
When we talked to the officials, we told them, if you start getting into 4s and you start getting down into that score, you better really be able to justify why you're so low, because that has to be just a terrible, terrible dance. And in general, you don't see terrible, terrible dances. You see some that are really, really good, and most of them are around the same thing. Okay? So we tried to take as much subjectivity out of it by saying focus on things you can actually quantify. Are they sharp? Are they variety? Did they do floor work? Were there level changes and formation changes? You can quantify those things, as opposed to, ooh, I just like that. Ooh, I didn't like that. And now you've got an 8 and a 4. Okay? And so we didn't want the dance to be so overly influencing this overall score sheet, because skills do have some regimented structure to them. So a team that's really, really good against a team that's not so good, the structure keeps them kind of close anyway, but there's no structure like that on dance. And so all of a sudden, a 1.5 versus a 9, and you just put a team 7.5 points ahead because of 5 8 counts of dance, 5 8 counts of the routine. So that's the kind of stuff we emphasize to them, and we're emphasizing to you guys, whether you like to dance or not, we recommend you got 4.5 counts in there, 4.5 8 counts, not counts, 4.5 8 counts. And you know what? If the kids are really bad at dancing, then focus on level changes, sharpness. Try not to get them into anything where it has to show rhythm, that kind of stuff. Like, you do what your kids can do, but make sure you give yourself enough to don't put yourself in the position where an official is going to go 1 8 count and it was bad. I'm giving them a 2, because that can really hurt you.
Were there any other questions about any other part of the music score sheet? Cowboy's going to go over the very last part, but I just want to double check. Everyone's good on partner stunts, pyramids, jumps, dance, tumbling? Good. And like Casey had mentioned, there's a ask question, or I forget how it's termed on their website, but you can ask any kind of questions and submits right to their office, and that we can follow up with any further questions you guys have regarding the score sheet. So.
Yeah, and one thing about the progressions, as we've been doing this training, in particular the stunt progressions, we're probably going to add a little bit more detail, especially in the inversion category, because with those progressions, you have to write in kind of broad strokes to begin with, but in the inversions, we're going to get a little bit more detailed, because the broad strokes are definitely, there's a wide range of inversions that are all kind of lumped together. We're going to try to spread those out just a little bit. That's probably one of the biggest changes you'll see the progression sheet maybe in the next week or so. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference, but we do want to make sure people understand that inversion to the top, full up, well, off the ground means a whole lot more than it does from a load. Okay, that's way different in ability level. So we're going to make sure that that's spelled out a little bit more detail. In regards to this last 5 points, this is the overall. This is where all 4 officials basically say, I'm giving a 4-5 out of 5. I'm giving a 5 out of 5. I'm giving a 4 out of 5, and I'm giving a 4 out of 5. It's averaged together, and then that one score is what goes in there. What are they looking for in here? This is overall picture of what I just saw. Things that are considered, flow of the routine. Also, we told them about watching center mat and seeing how often people cross the center mat. If people do it the whole routine, that routine was probably not set up as well as it could have been. The flow was probably a bit more jagged, okay? You as a coach, you need to be thinking about and working on your team so that you don't have to move a lot. As an example, I've got a stunt group that's really good, but in that stunt group, the top girl is my best dancer. The bases are not good at all. So when I go into the dance formation, my top girl of that stunt group may be at the point. The bases may be in the back left side, okay? But coming out of the dance, I want 4 stunt groups to go up, all right? You have 2 choices. Can that top stunt with three people that are around her so I have less movement, which shows that your team's more talented as a team? Or do I have to make those 4 people cross center to get to her, or make her cross center to the back to get to them because they have to stunt together? Everybody understand that? You want to try to minimize that visual, so you want the routine to flow. Same thing we talked about earlier. Another big part that's going to come into play here is it seamless? Did you come out of one transition, or did you come out of one section and it flowed right into the next section? So cheer into music, music into cheer, that kind of stuff. Okay, so you as a coach or a choreographer of a routine need to be thinking, I want to start in this, so how does this piece need to finish? I want to minimize movement. I want to maximize visuals. Okay? That's the kind of stuff that they're going to be rewarding here. Also in this category, execution. So if you fall in a stunt, all right, you're going to, first of all, your deduction judge is going to hit you with 0.25 or 0.5, whatever the deduction is. You're going to get hit in execution because you fell. It may hurt your difficulty depending on how the fall was or how many of them fell. If 3 out of 5 fell, your difficulty is going to get hurt. But it also could affect this, because a routine is not entertaining if it keeps falling. It becomes nerve-wracking. Nerve-wracking, it doesn't score good. Entertaining scores better, all right? So in this 5 points, that's going to be something they're going to take into consideration. And then like little wow factors thing, was there a cool formation change or a stunt visual or a pyramid visual that is unique or has a really cool look to it? Did you use formations to make your team look as big as possible? All of that is what goes into this right here, okay? Any questions on this last 5 points, how it's generated, how the average is going to come together? Awesome. Any questions in general? Yes?
I just have one. You mentioned that varsity is involved with, I think, 15 different states in helping to create their
Actually, probably more than that, but yeah.
My question is, in terms of this rubric, was it created specifically for New York State? And if so, or if not, what other state has rubrics that are similar to it?
I would say, well, when I first met with them, the state's rubric that I sent to them to look at was Virginia's. And the reason first of all, and the score sheet that I sent them to look at was Pennsylvania's. The reason being is Pennsylvania doesn't even have a rubric, so there was none to send them. They have a progression sheet, and that's it. Basically, like at our nationals, all of our judges have a progression sheet sitting next to them, but most of our judges have taught or are in the education part of cheerleading, so they naturally know, like, I teach this stunt before this stunt before that stunt, so that stunt's harder than this stunt. But, so I sent them Virginia's. I believe it was Virginia's. I've been working with them for a few years to kind of pare theirs back a little bit and make it a little bit simpler. And then from there, basically it became, okay, here's what you have currently been using. We can't get too far from that in one big jump. So, you know, where's the first logical step to make this simpler but not overly freak out everybody? Does that kind of answer the question? So we looked at multiple states, and then even within certain specific questions, I may have referenced Maine or New Mexico, some other ones that we've worked with in the past.
I'd say there's maybe 5 states that use rubrics across the country of the 50.
Well, that use
No,
them in great detail. Yeah.
Yeah, like the progressions all states use, but a rubric is only used, I think, in 4 states.
So our progression sheet for New York State is most similar to Virginia.
From a progression standpoint, it's similar to lots of
To
states
all of
because
them, yeah.
progression sheets to us means how do I teach stunts? I teach them in a safe manner. I teach at a lower level to a higher level to the highest level. So progression sheet wise, I'm hoping all the states use a similar logic
Yeah.
across the board.
Most do, yeah.
But applying points to the progressions, yes, it's not the same, but I did send them Virginia as an example of how they've modified theirs over a few years to kind of simplify the process. It was more about simplifying things so that you guys have freedom to do more of what your team does, and the officials don't have to keep looking at something and having all these things tell them how to calculate, because then they miss out on the execution and the overall and all the other stuff that goes into what makes a cheer routine fun to watch.